Welcome to the Wednesday, July 10th, 2019 Planning Board meeting for the town of Raymond. The board will come to order. We do have a quorum. We'll start with a roll call. Mike, would you start us off?
Mike D'Arcangelo.
Greg Foster. Ed Kranich.
Robert O'Neill.
Bruce Sanford.
Kevin Woodbury.
And with us this evening is Scott Dvorak. Did I get that right? Great. Code enforcement, and Jim Seymour, our contract planner. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chair if you're unable to see or hear. The board works from a published agenda and will be considering tonight's items in the following order. We have two public hearings scheduled. The first one for Keystone Investments Group, and the second one with Andrew Lane. Followed by a sketch plan review, some signing documents for decisions that were made at the last planning board, and then some ordinance workshop. In each instance, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of the applicable ordinances or state law. All persons speaking, including representatives of the applicant and members of the public, are asked to stand at the microphone, state their name, address, and affiliation with the application, for, oppose, or neutral. All persons speaking shall address the chairman. Any conversation must be held in advance until after the board has formally adjourned. After the board votes on the merits of each application, it will prepare a written notice of decision, because the notice of decision may substantially affect any appeals rights, and also as a matter of courtesy, the board asks that those attending the meeting with regard to a specific application not leave until the board has completed its discussion. Appeals from adverse decisions must be filed with the Superior Court or as otherwise provided by law within 45 days of this board's decision. Also, to be certain that you preserve your individual right to file any such appeal, you must be certain that the board's record evidences your appearance this evening in opposition and the basis of your opposition. Thanks, Ed. All right, our first order of business is the public hearing for Keystone Investments Group. Jim, you want to start us off?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You saw this at a sketch plan review last month. The applicant has a property that's located on Lot 2, Cranberry Pond subdivision, which really has access off 302. Currently, there's a mobile home type structure on the property. They wish to demolish or remove that and replace with 4 units. That would be 2 duplexes. They'd utilize the same driveway. They'd be expanding the driveway to allow for turning radius for fire apparatus and for parking. Septic would be located on the far west side of the lot, and they intended to use the existing well. There is some discussion we can have about that later on. As far as power goes, they'll utilize the existing power source into the property, and it'll be underground from the pole that serves the lot now. And at this point, we haven't seen any stormwater, but the idea is that they'll be sheet flowing all the runoff from the parking lot and the residence into a buffer area to be located in the front. There's a pretty heavy, substantial wooded area down gradient of the house between the 302 and the parking lot. This is not in a shoreland zone, as it's outside the 600-foot lake setback. As I mentioned, you folks had a site walk also at the prior to the last meeting, and we had some discussion at that during the pre-application for the project. The applicant is here and recommend that he can fill in anything else that I may have missed.
Thanks, Jim. Dustin?
All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Dustin Roma with DM Roma Consulting Engineers. Just to kind of expand on a couple of those items and answer some of the questions that came up in Mr. Seymour's memo. We have provided a septic system design for the project, and there was some discussions at the site walk about just that gully that's kind of somewhat close proximity to where that leach field is going to be going. So we have shown on the grading plan here how we're going to essentially kind of fill in that area in front of the leach field to provide some more protection there from any sort of breakout. So we are going to fill in that hole, and it's indicated on the plans as finished grades. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of run through the 9 bulleted items. It's on the last page of the memo that Jim has outlined as some discussion points here tonight that we hope we can address as conditions of approval for this project. Number one.
Let me interrupt you. Before you do that, let me just see if there's anyone from the public.
sure.
Then, is there anyone from here that, in the public that would like to talk specifically about this? Any? Okay, then I'm just going to open and close the public hearing. Okay, Dustin?
Sure.
Thank you.
The first bullet item just deals with the adequate water supply for the project. So, thanks, Mary. Are we on? Are we on? Good. So I'll approach the board here. It'll be a little easier. So, we have an existing well on the site here now. There's just the question was raised about whether or not that well would be suitable for essentially 4 units that are also going to be on sprinkler systems, and just making sure we have another location on the site that could provide additional well location if the yield was insufficient. So we've looked at this area here. Certainly the areas above the site would be difficult to get a well driller up to that location, but we do have some really nice kind of flat areas down in through here. The septic systems for these adjacent houses are in the backs here and over here, so we do have the required separation. If we were to need to install a second well, we could do it down in this location here and have very easy access to it without having to clear additional trees in that area. The second item has to do with the septic design, which we kind of touched on previously, just in, again, filling in some of this area just to provide some protection for that slope. We're agreeable to providing a crown to the driveway, and all that is adjusting these contour lines here to basically send the water off the side of the pavement rather than running it straight down the road. So that's a simple fix to just essentially kind of create these contours along the driveway here. We're agreeable to that. The fourth item, I guess there was some road ditch work that had been done along the roadway there, and it actually kind of damaged some of the culverts, so we're going to just replace this culvert with a new one at the entrance there rather than try to extend it, and we will have riprap on both the inlet and the outlet. And we've also been in contact with DOT about the driveway entrance, and we will coordinate with them just on the widening. What they've told us is that going from 1 unit to 4 doesn't constitute a change of use. If you go to 5 or more units, then they consider that a commercial change of use at that point. So there's no change of use to go from 1 to 4, but where the driveway here, if we're expanding it by more than 50%, then we would need a driveway entrance permit. But where this was surveyed, you can see, I mean, it's less, even though it's about 16 feet as you come down through here, or 14 feet or 16 feet, it widens out substantially here, so you can see the area that we're widening is less than 50%. So again, we'll get that confirmed with DOT, but we do have that in writing from them that if you're doing less than 50%, it's considered a grandfather driveway. Jim mentioned the stormwater calculations, and we've been, just kind of talking this whole time about this area being a buffer, and it's a substantial distance. And what I think is appropriate is to just quantify those points on the plan, just so that it's clear how the stormwater buffers are meeting that point system. So again, we're confident that this meets that point system requirement, and we just like to add that note to the plans. The question about number 8, which deals with cutoff drains and foundation drains, potentially being an added improvement, and we're agreeable to that here, I think, because what's happening is the water will be shedding off the backs of these buildings. We've kind of graded it away in the rear side, but we do have water that comes down this hill, and what we can do is we're agreeable to installing an under drain in this trench area through here, which we would probably bring just under the driveway and daylight it at a low elevation here. We've got plenty of elevation to do that, and that would also provide relief and a common location for the foundation drain. So that's an easy addition to put on the plans. And we've also added a number of elements to the plan to dealing with comment number 9, as far as access for the site for fire apparatus. The turnaround that's here has dimensions that are sufficient for a fire truck to come in, back up, and turn around this way. So we did have a meeting today and discussed the no parking signs that we've got located here and here, fire lane signs, the design of this driveway in through here, and really the only, I mean, we just, this existing slope that comes up through there really can't be any flatter. I think when we walked it, we were all concerned. Just looking at it, it is steeper than what you'd normally see for a private road. But in this case, where we have the 20-foot of width to get up there, we've got a nice wide turn coming up through here, and we have agreed to sprinkle all the buildings. We felt that was a reasonable compromise to address the steep slope situation for this kind of short stretch of road that's here. So that's how we intend to address those comments, and so I'll turn it back over to the board and answer your questions.
Thanks, Justin. Is the fire department okay with that?
Wayne Jones,
Oh.
Fire Department, is here. I believe they are agreeable to everything, as long as we see the notes and things added, but I'll let him speak to that.
Yeah, Wayne Jones, the fire inspector. Yeah, we're agreeable with all the notes that were just made. One of our discussions today was just making sure that our angle of approach and departure angles, that we don't bottom out. That would be the only other thing that hasn't been mentioned. We just need to make sure that we don't bottom out trying to get up there. But as far as the grade and that short distance, as long as we don't bottom out, and with that increased width, we'd be fine.
Okay, but are you gonna do those do those calculations to determine if
Yeah,
you can get up?
Yeah, Dustin already has those. So.
Okay,
Yep, he provided those to us, so we'll, the methodology that they use, so that we'll perform those and get them to them for approval.
okay, thanks. Does the board have questions? Dustin, how are the costs going to be handled for things that are in common, like the electricity for the well pump, the pumping of the septic? How is that?
These are all intended to be apartments, so they're all going to be single ownership, and it'll be included in the rent. So the owner will pay, you know, I suppose that the electrical bills will be paid separately by each tenant. So
Was
Yeah.
it individually metered?
yeah, we may have to just run a separate common meter for things that are common, as far as, I mean, in this case, it would just be the well pump. The septic system itself, being pumped, that would be the responsibility of the owner, just to do that and cover that cost every couple of years. Where these are rented units, we wouldn't expect the tenants to maintain the septic system.
Okay, if the units are then sold, though, how does that work?
If the units are sold, then we would need to create a condominium declaration, which would which would outline common elements, limited common elements. In this case, the septic system would be designated as a
Under
common
that
element,
require-
and would be
And that would be
shared.
done at the condominium process?
Correct.
You
Okay.
can make that, if you want, you can have that as a condition.
Yeah, I think we probably should, considering,
If it's converted to a condo, that it be.
Yeah, an agreement for the septic system.
Sure.
and-
yeah,
Well, that, and we need a condominium document.
right. Yeah, which I don't think we've never run into, as far as I know. Anything else? Everybody else happy?
The only thing I have is we kind of skipped over a couple items when you went through that. One was, I don't expect it, but it's a requirement, provide a letter from Maine Historic Preservation, part of our subdivision requirement.
Yeah, considering there's already a structure there.
Right, and I don't expect that. And then two, the proof of financial capacity as a condition, or we've run into this, we need to clarify that financial capacity is not the same as providing a performance bond or a performance guarantee. It just shows that the applicant has adequate capacity to undertake the project. The bond is a very specific amount geared towards public improvements. Two different distinct things. Sometimes they get messed up and confused.
You okay with it?
Yep, we're okay with that. Yeah, the way we see the sequence of this going, I mean, the building construction would likely commence utilizing the existing roadway so we don't damage the new road. And then we would basically rough in the gravel and all that, and then we would, so it basically gets handled more like a building permit, and we could certainly provide the letter of financial capacity when we submit for those building permit applications.
Anything else you have?
Just the last one that you added.
Okay. All right, then I'm just going to run through, instead of individual vote on every one of these, we did last time, I'm just going to run through the items. If it sparks a question or something, just stop me as we go through. So for Article 7 of the minor subdivision, Article A is, will not result in any undue water or air pollution. And this is determining the planning board shall at least consider the elevation, and I think we have, nature of the soil, which is done, the slope of the land. I think that resulted in the little modification to the septic design, and applicable state and local health water resources. B is has sufficient water available for reasonable foreseeable needs of the subdivision, and we've addressed that. You've confirmed that there's a second well.
Yeah, we have a condition of approval with a submission requirement, yep.
Item C is will not cause any reasonable burden on existing water supply, which is always interesting to determine. Will not cause item D will not cause unreasonable soil erosion or reduction to the capacity of the land to hold the water. I mean, I think it is a very steep grade, but it's also well vegetated. Will not cause unreasonable, item E will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion. I think that's existing road, and we've covered that. Existing driveway, excuse me, we've covered that. Will provide for adequate soil and sewage waste disposal, that has been taken care of. Will not cause an unreasonable burden on the ability of the town of Raymond to dispose of solid waste or sewage. Item H, will not place an unreasonable burden on the ability of the town of Raymond to provide municipal or government services. Item I, will not have an undue adverse effect on the scenic or natural beauty of the area. Item J is in conformance with the subdivision ordinance, comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, floodplain management ordinance, or any duly adopted town ordinances. Item K, the subdivider has adequate financial and technical capacity to meet the required standards. That's covered in one of the conditions of approval. Whenever situated entirely or partially within the watershed, we're not in the watershed, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Item M, will not alone or in conjunction with existing activities adversely affect the quality or quantity of groundwater based on the Federal Emergency Management Agency flood plan and full floodway maps, flood insurance rate maps. It's not located, so we're okay. Item O, all freshwater wetlands, we didn't find any. Any river, stream, or brook, and it's not applicable. The subdivision will provide for adequate stormwater management, and that has been discussed. Are we putting that in still as a condition, or now that's on the plan?
Yeah, what I would recommend is, because we haven't seen all these changes yet.
Yep.
That we keep them as conditions, and then we'll just address them
Okay.
with the final signing of the plat.
Item R, the lots of proposed subdivision have shore frontage, that's not applicable. S is long-term cumulative effects of the proposed subdivision will not unreasonably increase, that's not applicable. And item T, for any proposed subdivision that crosses additional boundaries, that's not applicable.
I have one request on the stormwater buffer, whatever they decide for appropriate shape, dimension of that buffer, that it's shown on the plat to be recorded as a restricted stormwater buffer.
Okay, good idea. Okay,
Yep, yeah, and we can mark it in the field as well permanently, so.
Yeah, that's typically what we like, some small pins or something just to identify it, so people don't cut it.
So something just came to my mind. In terms of emergency response, are those units going to be labeled, they're going to have the same numeric address, but are they going to be individually labeled like A, B, C, D kind of thing, or?
It's interesting you bring that up, because we asked Kayla that today, and the way she said it would be done is they would maintain the same address that's there now, and each one would be considered a suite, whether it's A or 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's how it would be addressed at the town.
The alphabetical is a clear distinction than using numeric and numeric together. So A, B, C, D would be great.
Yep, yeah, whatever the E911 officer tells us, that's what we'll call them.
You Any other questions come up in that?
Oh, one other question I have for Dustin, and it's one that maybe the board we can undertake sometime too, is mailboxes and where mailboxes are situated. With this one, it's probably not so difficult. It could be out on 302 or wherever the post office is, but in some of these larger ones, you know, these big gangs out on the main street is maybe not a good idea.
Off the road, right.
Off the road. So, I mean, I don't think this one is as bad. I don't know, do they get their mail at the top or is there a mailbox at the bottom? I don't know. I don't remember seeing a
There
mailbox.
was a mailbox at the bottom.
It's at the bottom of the hill on this
Yeah,
side.
so they might have
yeah.
a small gang at the bottom to this one, which
Right.
I don't think is quite so difficult, as long as it's kind of off the road, because you know as the traffic goes through there, you don't want to be getting your mail at 50, 60 going by you. So maybe just make sure that mailbox gang is slightly off the road, but obviously the postal service has a say of that too.
Right.
All right, so for the conditions of approval, are we leaving all 9 in, or are we going to?
Yes, I would leave all 9 in. I mean, again, I
It's-
appreciate, and we've discussed it, we just haven't seen it yet on a formal plan. Leave them in there and then add the 10th, which would be if the project is condominiumized, we'll need a utility share program to address, along with a condominium plat to be signed by the planning board.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve including the 10 conditions that were enumerated in the memo.
For a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, done.
6-0.
All right. Okay, next up is the public hearing for Andrew Lane.
Well,
for
it's not
Nicholas
Andrew
Drive.
Lane, it's Nicholas Drive. It's not
Excuse me, Andrew for Andrew Lane. Jim, you ready? Start us off?
All right. This property was actually before you back a few years ago, when a family was looking to improve this road and do a few lot splits off Wayne Wood presented. In the interim, my understanding is they split some lots off and sold those, and basically like a family subdivision. So now the applicants are here tonight are those that purchased the lot and are looking to improve that access road, private road, to be brought to private road standards such that they can get their building permits to construct their homes. As you can see, there are 2 houses currently located on the small stub of Nicholas Drive. The applicant is looking to extend the road in a northward direction about 850, 860 feet. We had discussed with the applicant, I know Scott had, about some tree clearing. They were going to do some minor harvesting in the proximity of where the road is and maybe where the lots are. They got a little ambitious and got ahead of themselves and started putting down some gravel, and we stopped them with that. We had some concerns about, if you look on the plan, one of the ways they're planning to address stormwater was with a forest buffer. We wanted to make sure that that was not harmed, and I believe Dustin can address that in his presentation. They did not impact that. It's a pretty straight drive down through the road. It's all downhill. It does have adequate sight distance. You'll have to review that against the street ordinance. This will serve 4 more lots, therefore it has to meet the the next higher up standard for private road, which is, I think, 16-foot travel width with 3-foot shoulders. The applicant has shown that. There was a homeowners agreement in place with the 3 owners that had access off that. That'll have to be modified to address the new owners coming on board or any other future subdividers that may come into play. They have provided us proof that the lots that they are planning to build on will have adequate soils for septics. And like as I mentioned, they've discussed how they're going to treat stormwater. So with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Thanks, Jim.
Just a quick one, and then we'll make sure the public.
Sure, yep, so I'll just touch on a couple of those items. So we did visit the site and confirm that the wooded area proposed for the stormwater buffer had not been cut, and that there's sufficient area there. We actually needed to cut a little bit more in order to build the level spreader, and also the area for the hammerhead turnaround is still in a wooded area. So what they had done is basically cut just a straight line in where the road is intended to go. The initial intent was to just bring in just some fill to fill in the low areas. They did place some gravel in the beginning section of the road just because it was a little rough. But they've been working with Scott and had ceased that part of the work and waiting for these permits to finish, or for us to go through the design process, and then they're certainly eager to finish out the product. But it is coming along nicely now. I mean, they're building out a nice wide road base so that we can have the full 22-foot width of the roadway coming in. The existing portion of Nichols Drive is holding up fairly nicely throughout the construction so far. Any damage of that road will be repaired, and the intent is to lay a 16-foot wide strip of reclaimed asphalt finished surface over the roadway. Once it's finished, built out, after the foundations are in and the heavy construction is complete, it'll be a nice smooth finish to the roadway. Not something that's necessarily required by ordinance, but we're willing to do it to really kind of provide a nice road surface that's going to be have some good durability. I will get into some of the other items here, but for now I'll turn it over to you to open up the public hearing and answer any questions that may come up.
Thank you. Are there any quick questions before? Like I said, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this project? Done? Close the public hearing? All right.
So again, I'm going to just kind of go through. Jim's done a very nice job at kind of bulleting the items that we would like to propose to address as conditions of approval. We did have an opportunity to meet today with the fire inspector and planner just to kind of go over these items. And I think the biggest item of concern when we were looking at whether or not this potentially could be viewed as a conditional approval was whether or not that forested buffer had been cut. Because if that had happened, really, I mean, we'd have to come up with a different design because the forest is gone, but we were able to confirm that that wasn't the case. So I will go down through these. The question number one was just due to the proximity of that septic system test pit location being pretty close to the road. The reason it was put there was because previously the intent was to build this road extension in a different location. We were going to look at a new easement. There was an existing woods road that kind of ran through here. So that was the original intent, to build the road. So if that was where it was built, this test pit was further off the road. So that's the only reason that it's there. We walked around the site here, and there's plenty of additional area available up in this location to just slide the septic system back. So we will do a new HHE 200 design for that leach field. Question number two just really deals with the existing Nichols Drive conditions and making sure that we did provide a cross-section on a separate sheet, but we need to basically have one recordable plan sheet that has all the information on it in the registry. So this plan and profile sheet here will have a signature block added, and we'll also find a spot for the road cross-section by kind of cutting out some of the grid on this kind of tall profile here. So that information will get added to this plan. so that it can be signed and recorded and have the required information on it. And I spoke about the existing portion of Nichols Drive. Again, it's holding up well through the construction, and we intend to resurface it upon completion. It does have the required 22-foot wide width, shoulder to shoulder, and the 16-foot travel way there currently. Comment number 3, stormwater management provisions. There was some comments in here just to add some culvert locations for the driveways, just to be a little bit more clear and make sure that they're sized appropriately for the drainage area that comes to it. We have done an analysis of the tributary area going into the level spreader and the buffers and all that information, so that we have that information, and we intend to use 15-inch culverts going under the driveways, which have plenty of capacity. We are intending as well to install a cross culvert between basically just before this level spreader here. So previously we were directing all this water to just kind of come down the road. Now that after the site inspection, we had talked to the applicants today and looked at it, and it seems very feasible to bring a culvert across the road here, which would allow us to, again, capture some more water and direct it down in through those that stormwater buffer to provide some additional treatment. We had the method that we used when we were quantifying the stormwater calculations. It was more in line with the DEP general standard, but again, Jim has asked us to just use the methodology in the ordinance, which is the point system, and again, put that information on the plans just so that it's clear that the board used that information to determine compliance. So we're happy to do that. Number 4, location of utilities to serve the new homes. We hadn't shown power on this plan. We've decided to put in underground power along the roadway to serve the project. So we are in the process of coordinating that with CMP on transformer locations. Once we get that information from them, then that'll be added to the plans. But all the power for the road extension and the power going to the lots will be underground. Number 5 is just verify tree clearing conducted and if it impacts the proposed wooded buffers. So again, we did verify that on site today, that the buffer was impacted by the cutting that was done. Number 6, all roadway monuments shall be shown for the entire length of the road. We have been in contact with Wayne Wood about setting the pins for the lots and the right-of-way, where we are establishing a new hammerhead at the end of the roadway, and we're also proposing lot split or lot conveyances, land swaps between the two properties. So we're going to pin, once those conveyances are complete, we'll have all those new boundaries pinned as a condition of approval. Again, that speaks to number 7, the property swap between them. Again, that'll be completed and pinned on the ground prior to the start of the building construction. Currently, for number 8, trash removal is, I noticed today there was the 2 barrels at the end of the road. Currently, trash removal occurs just on Route 85. We discussed today, I mean, in most likely, they're going to be just private haulers rather than, it's such a long distance from the lots out to the road. So their intent is to just contract private leads for trash removal. They have companies that they work with that do that, and they're proposing to just kind of do that on their own as far as trash removal goes. And Jim had brought up mailbox considerations. That'll be something that we'll just, whatever the post office asks us to do, if we're going to add 2 more mailboxes to the end of the road, or if they would like to come into the road, whatever they require us to do is what we'll do. Number 9 is a requirement to have the current homeowners sign off on a new agreement. We did include a copy in your packets of the current road maintenance agreement that is in place for the 2 lots that are there. There are provisions in that document which deal with new members coming on board, new users of the road, and how the allocation of costs and all that gets distributed. So we're happy to the extent we need to modify that agreement and then get it endorsed, if it needs to be referenced in the deeds for these new lots or whatever, we'll happy to provide that information to the planning department. Item number 10, again, has to do with the clearing of trees, and it has to do with kind of the future extension of the roadway and potential impact. So certainly this approval is for this roadway limits here. Any extension of the roadway would certainly require us to come back to the board for approval. And currently the portion of this lot, it's basically been kind of cleared out into here. These are the test pits that were dug for the septic system design that was included in the packets. So we've shown kind of the two intended kind of house locations in these two areas. So it wouldn't interfere with any future road connection. You know, this would be a more substantial wetland crossing in through here. So this would likely require some DEP permitting to get across this larger swath of wetlands. But you know, what we've done is we propose to come off the end of the road and cross it at a narrower spot where we can put in a culvert. There is some, you know, substantial drainage that comes down through here, so we'll address that with a culvert crossing here. And we wanted to do that rather than propose a much longer crossing through that wetland. So that situation would certainly be analyzed in more detail in the future if we were to come forward with a plan to extend the road and potentially split that lot on the end into two parcels. Question 11 is just in regards to whether or not the landowner here, Perini, is going to have access over this road. And I mean, at this time it's being built to accommodate these two house lots. That would, I mean, if at some point in the future he was to come forward and propose some sort of development, I mean, I'm not sure at this point whether the rights exist to use this road. This road was basically provided to access this land, so that would need to be investigated further. Certainly that the road requirements are there so that lots could be accessed off this road and still meet the town's requirements to be from 4 to 10 lots. So we feel we're doing our part to build a very nice road, and that if that were contemplated in the future, then we'd have to discuss it at that point. But to my knowledge, there hasn't been any discussion about that lot utilizing this road for access for any future development. And we're, number 12, just discuss adding a note to the plan saying that we're going to establish a performance guarantee prior to commencing additional work, which we're agreeable to. So I think that that covers those items there. If there's anything else that I missed, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Okay. Just to start off with, Dustin, you know, we've, at least in my experience, we worked with you in a couple of projects, and you're very easy to work with. You're more than willing to, as we work through these back and forth. But from the time that I've been on the board, we've never approved a project with this many conditions going in to the approval process, to that final process. Now, I'm only one vote, it's up to the board, but as we go forward, it would be very unusual for us to do that, especially with some key things like property swaps that have not been executed, that would need to be executed before construction were to start. And we have you saying that they will be executed. I trust you that they will be executed, but in the past, the board has always wanted to see that documentation before we made an approval on a project, especially if there ever, things happen. If something came up where this was not to go forward, right, the process there wouldn't be there.
Yep.
So,
As far as the property swaps go, it's generally been our experience that we do it usually the other way around, in that usually the property swaps don't happen unless the project's approved. So it's something that we want to make sure everyone's good with it, and then we convey the properties afterwards.
I mean, if you wanted to proceed that, we probably would need a letter of intent, let's saying if, something that, signed, notarized, saying that in fact, yes, the property, if the project's approved.
Right.
You know, one, the horse for the cart, cart for the horse, it wouldn't matter, but the board would need something.
Yep,
That
sure.
would say that, yeah, this is, we're basing an approval based upon something that we have no idea that whether or not it's actually
Both parties
going
have
to happen.
agreed to.
Right.
Yeah, no, I understand that for sure.
Okay. So, we can continue through, and I think we should continue through to make sure, and then we can determine at the end and decide whether or not, we'll go with the final approval, or we will go with what needs to be done to come back to the board
Yep.
next
And
time.
if in the end, the item of biggest concern is the land swaps, the two individuals who own the two property are here tonight, so they could say for the
Okay.
record that
Yep,
they're agreeable.
but
to
there are
it.
others, I just,
Yep.
okay. Okay, does the board have specific questions? Yep, go ahead.
I do. First thing I just note, the last sentence of condition number 10 that says any additional lot access or extension of the travelway of the private road, I think that should say will not be allowed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we need to insert the word not there.
Yeah.
And just to comment on Bob's comment, I agree with him on that. I'm sure that, I'm not sure, but I suspect that the land clearing and gravel work and road, grubbing and whatnot that's taken place to date was all innocent, but it's a little bit of a red flag to the board when an owner will jump in and start doing that in anticipation of approval of a project that has not been approved, and it just indicates that maybe this guy could be hard to work with, or there's something that could raise its head, and it's a bit of a red flag. So I think that we need to see, everything ironed out properly before you're going to get approval. What I'm confused on is that the two wastewater disposal system large-scale plans don't seem to have true symmetry with the smaller scale site plan. The first one that references test pit number 1 is showing as really being in the middle of the proposed bed, and the potential house that is shown, neither of those are shown on the large scale plan where test pit 1 is indicated. As a matter of fact, the proposed house on that lot is well to the south of the location of the house and the test pit in the middle of the proposed bed on the large scale application plan. So there doesn't seem to be any symmetry there. And then on the other one that shows test pit number 5, if I orient this plan with the 262.5 foot property line that's running along on the left, and I orient test pit number 5, the house is okay, seems to be in the right location, but the angle of the road doesn't bear any real relationship to the angle of the Nichols Road extension that's shown on the large scale plan. So I think that there may be some coordinational issues that the large scale sketch plan for the wastewater application needs to better reflect what's shown on the civil plan, and if in fact the civil plan is not correct as far as the location of the house and the test pits being shown in the middle of the bed, you need to clean that up for us. Okay.
Yeah, and the intent is that, again, these, the HHE 200s were done really just kind of out in the woods, initial design, and once we really got into laying out the houses and everything, we recognized that some changes would need to be made.
So they relocated the house, and yeah, I understand that, but
we're
they
gonna get
need
new
to,
septic systems.
the large scale plan needs to reflect what you show on the small scale plan for symmetry between the two.
Just so we have clarity on that, I mean, we're looking at it from a private road. We really don't need the full-blown design. We just need to make sure that there's passing soils on the lots that could be accessed from these roads. But to your
So
point,
you're okay with this being more
well,
diagrammatic? or you
I would like to see, like, to your point, I'd like to see where the actual test pit for the septic system is going to be. If they have that information, let's get it on the plan.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Scott, did you have something?
As far as the gravel, I mean, in talking with them, they went down there to cut trees, which they were allowed to do. It was the gentleman who was hauling out the wood that wanted some more in there. He had lost, the excavator had sank, so he asked for heavier gravel than normally they would put in to get wood in. We just decided that it was wanted to keep it to just that. That's all they could do. And they were very, very compliant with that. They called me right away after we stopped it. So, I mean, the intent was okay. It's just the gentleman who was taking the wood out wanted something heavier than normally they would throw down there because it was rather wet in some of the places.
Has the area that's been disturbed earth been stabilized? Either with mulch or silt fence or anything?
I did not see any silt fence. I think the areas were more cut. I only think there was one, and it might have been from the logging operation where they pulled all the logs up into a common area. That was the only area that was really disturbed. And the only thing I was just questioning when I saw it was I wasn't sure where I was on the face of the planet to make sure that it wasn't in the area that they had preserved as a tree cut, no tree cut area for stormwater purposes. So,
Because if they don't get permission to resume construction right away,
Yeah.
then we
No, I
would
think
like
for
to
the
see
most part it was
stabilized
just-
in mulch or something.
I think for the most part it was just cut. I don't think they've actually stumped a whole lot down there.
No. But they did install silt fence. If you go down there, that first lot coming in, there's quite a bit of silt fence. It's all in. I inspected it today. It was towed in. They've got some good erosion control up around the side of the roads. But that was done recently.
I just had a couple, I mean, a lot of these things are going to be additional notes that are going to be required on the plat and just, clarity about where things are going. We've got some culverts they're going to be adding, the record plat and what we're doing with that. One item I had, number 8, kind of skipped over to, was street lighting. Does the intersection of Nichols Drive and 85, does that have a light?
I don't believe it does.
We may want to have a light at that intersection, whether it's on an existing CMP pole or something. Typically, we try to have a light at the intersection of the private road and a major street.
Yep, if that's a policy of the town, we can put a overhead up on that pole.
I think we try to go on an existing pole if we can, just so that intersection is, lit. If it's not there, then obviously I don't think we're gonna make you put in a separate light, but if it's available, I think it's something we'd like to see.
Okay.
I mean, other than that, I know there's a number of items here, and I think a few of them may cross over between each other. I mean, again, it's up to the board. Obviously, there are a number of things that we need to see on the plan. I think quite a few of them were just note additions and maybe some technical items. To your point, Bob, I was kind of caught in between, but knowing that the stormwater buffer has not been disturbed, I'm a little bit more at ease than I was when I wrote this. But obviously, that's a board discussion.
Dustin, could you just talk a little bit about the wetland that go through here, how the water is coming down and is going to be directed to what direction? Directed to the west of,
Kind of this way?
yeah, is that correct? Am I
Yep.
reading that correctly?
Yep. Yeah, so
Okay.
this is the wetland area down and through here, and this is kind of the drainage course. So it's kind of a really flat, wide area as you get in through here. And then it does tighten up in this location. And this is where you see more of the concentrated flow coming down through the site and through here. So we'll have a driveway culvert here. We located the hammerhead in an area of upland, and that's another reason why we wanted to kind of pull the road back, is because there's this island of upland area here where everything else around it is lower. So we're going to put the hammerhead in that location, so it's not going to impede the drainage route that goes through there. So the water will continue just as it does now, because the building site for Andrew's lot is back here, and then the building site for Walters is in this location. So we've purposely left this corridor down through here so that drainage can continue to run. It'll run right past, again, where it tightens up right here at the end of the hammerhead. It'll go through a new culvert underneath this driveway, and then it'll just kind of keep going.
Okay. And the runoff then from the road itself is going to,
Yep, it kind of ends up in that same area, so, but rather than channelizing it down, 2 ditches and then just dumping it out at the end of the road, what we're doing is we're gonna pick it up, send it through this level spreader here, and then, again, this is all upland area adjacent to that wetland that's forested, so we'll spread that water back out and let it sheet flow through here, and then it'll get into this wetland and eventually concentrate down through here, but at least it'll pick it up, slow it down, treat it through that flat area, and then kind of send it to where it was going anyway.
okay.
Just-
Go ahead.
Just with the length of that road being 800 feet, do you see any concerns with the amount of runoff coming in there? Is there capacity in the wetlands to hold that? Where does it ultimately go?
Yeah, and we're certainly agreeable to installing some stone check dams along the roadway. It's not necessarily excessively steep, but we find that does a good job at just, again, keeping that slug of water from not just coming right down through. So, we can install some stone check dams along the way to, again, just kind of slow that water down coming down those ditches. And then, yeah, I mean, from here, this is all just a big wooded parcel. It basically abuts to the back side of the Whitney Way project that comes around the other way. So that road doesn't go all the way to the end of that property, so there's some large lots on the back side of that. So this really just kind of continues down through a fairly large wooded area. There's no residences or development in this area that would be impacted by this drainage that comes down through, and then it just kind of keeps going down through the woods.
Okay, but that is not their property, right? So the runoff is going,
Right, the runoff basically kind of continues to go in this direction, and then it kind of flattens out, and there's another bigger wetland down through here.
Right.
And that Whitney Way project has several drainage paths that run down through it, so it's kind of the story of this sort of area is that you've got some steeper areas, and then where it flattens out, it tends to have wetland hydrology. So again, we're not going to impede that coming through, and this level spreader and buffer is going to do a good job, along with the check dams, of just, again, picking up the water and then just slowing it back out and then letting it go down through those wetland
okay.
areas.
And the stormwater management plan is one of the pieces that we don't have, right?
The, well, we provided,
Did I miss that, or?
we provided calculations for that buffer sizing and all of that, but, so it's all been designed.
Right.
But as far as packaging it up in a stormwater management plan, yeah,
We
we
don't
can
have-
certainly do
okay.
that.
That's what I thought. Sarah, more questions?
I just have a quick procedure question. If this were a subdivision application, then it would make perfect sense to me that we would want to make sure that the land divisions were all done prior to approval, because we don't want to have people have to amend the subdivision. But since it's a roadway permit, are we ahead of ourselves worrying about that? Are we authorized under a roadway construction permit to require the land divisions to be all
Part
done?
of the swap that is being considered is the catalyst that gives Mr. Brown legal road frontage.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, thanks.
All right.
And then just one other quick question. People hate to pay for garbage trash collection. It's a huge issue. So what would it take, I'm not familiar with how it works, what would it take for the town to do that?
7 homes it used to be. I'm not sure if it still is that, but 7 homes.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the
Gotcha.
threshold
Was.
is, but I don't believe on 4 they'll come down there
No.
and
It was
take
it
it.
used to be 7 a number of years ago. I doubt the number went down.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
You're welcome. All right, so for the board, how would you like to proceed? Do you want to go through, I think we've pretty much, I mean, there's, for the road, we don't have nearly as much as with the subdivision. We have the Article 10 items,
Yeah, and I think you already,
and we've
you
covered.
probably can chisel a couple of those off if you're going with that route.
All right. So I guess it's, do you want to proceed, or do you want to wait until, I don't want to say the application is complete, because I think it's, everything is there, it's just that it's not all put together in the normal package.
Yeah, I'd suggest that we table it until we get,
I would agree with that.
information.
I'd rather table
provided.
it and get the information more quickly. Correct.
Kevin, do you have,
I agree with that.
good? Mike? No, you're not gonna agree with everybody, are you?
No.
Oh, okay, good.
Well, if the conditions are on there, they don't do anything until the conditions are met anyway.
This is true, but in the past, we've always wanted those, one or two conditions have always come
understand
up,
that,
but we've always, there's some key things here that we don't have in front of us, that we would normally have.
Yeah, I understand that.
I move we table and encourage the applicant to clean things up a little bit and get them submitted in a timely fashion so we can look at it next month.
Second?
The due date,
Mary. This has already had a public hearing. We did not have public comment, so obviously I don't think we need to necessarily post for public
no, I don't
hearing.
think so either. We just need, I was looking for the due date
Yeah.
for Dustin to you.
If we get that in by next Thursday,
week
is that okay, Mary?
Probably about 10 days.
Next week, Thursday, the 18th. Yeah.
Is that something you can do?
Is that doable?
Yeah, is the board going to be satisfied with just with a letter of intent as far as the land swaps?
Yeah.
go?
That would
be
Just
fine.
not sure if
Yeah,
we
I
can
think
get
it just
everything
falls
from
under
the
like right title and interest, so if
Yeah.
if
That's
there's an
fine.
interest,
board. Okay.
then just get the other items. So, and just for secondary comment, Inspector Jones just pointed out to me that we had that discussion today about posting the turnaround as a fire lane, so the people can't
Signage,
park. Yep. So, yeah, there is a bunch of things to clean up, and if we can get those, we'll process it and get it back to you in August. So as long as you get it to us by next Thursday, I think we'll have ample time to get that back on in August, and hopefully it's final at that point and we can sign it.
All right, it didn't sound like there was any issues from the board with what we presented tonight. It's just a matter of cleaning it up. and-
Yeah, putting a
okay.
package together,
Yep.
yeah. I don't think there are any issues. Does anybody have really any major issues with it, Mike? You?
No, and
Yeah, so
I
think-
looked through the packet and I didn't see the stormwater sizing things, but if you have it,
Yep.
just include that.
Yeah, I
with
did
it.
not see the stormwater
Okay.
plan either. Okay, so was there a second?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the table? Go ahead.
So what are exactly the key points that we need? I just want to make sure that we're...
With the microphone that's being recorded. Thank you.
I
I
think.
just want to be
Yep,
sure
so
that we,
give your name and all that good stuff.
Andrew Lane, the
Oh,
applicant.
okay. Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, that's okay. I kind of heard like some gray area as far as what key points we definitely need. Is looking like the stormwater and a letter of intent. Are those the two main key points?
Yeah, and
that
there's just
we
a
need?
bunch of notes. I really think.
Okay, I
the
mean,
notes-
I read through your notes as
Yep.
well today. I understand. I mean,
I think it's stormwater, and I do think it's in the right title of interest,
Right.
because that does impact how he gets his frontage. And then I think everything, and then maybe the draft of the agreement that we want to see for the road maintenance.
Road maintenance agreement we normally have, right?
Yeah, so those are probably the three big things.
Okay.
The rest of it's just cleanup work, which Dustin's probably well on his way.
Probably do tonight. We get you out of here earlier.
Yeah, give us a half hour. So we can gain 30 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Andrew.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, next up is the sketch plan review. Floyd Brown, the applicant.
As he's,
Pre-application.
yeah, this is a pre-sketch, and just give you a little background. This is off Egypt Road. The previous owner put a pretty substantial road in for hauling lumber out of there. They cut that back a while ago. The road is in tremendously great shape, well-built. But now Floyd Brown would like to put his own personal home in there. As part of, it's a strange deed, they were limited by the number of lots they could provide to family members in there. So that's the plan that you see that Dustin has up there. What is difficult is giving the setting of the land. There really is no other way to get to that land that's developable. It has some excessive slopes, and it's kind of in two phases. When you come in off Egypt Road, you get to that first bend, it's about 12–13%. I've met with them out there. That first section's not bad. It's the next section going to the top and over that's like 17%, and that's fairly substantially steep. It is substantially steep. And they met today with Wayne Jones and myself, and Wayne is here to kind of give you some concerns or some measures that he thinks the fire department can help with. But I do think that we're here tonight just for obviously sketch plan to get some input. I think regardless of whatever you do, it would be valuable to do a site walk on this one so you get a sense of what's going on. The standard for the private road is 10%. If it were backlot driveway, just to give you some perspective, you could go to 12%. Part of that reason and rationale is between 10 and 12, we know everything can work for everybody to get nice, safe access. When we get above that, we got to look at the site conditions and look at specific conditions to warrant any kind of design to work. So if it does come forward with an application, that will be a waiver request from you because it exceeds the normal slope. And that is probably the main thing with this whole development is the slope of the road. Everything else is pretty straightforward, but I'll let Dustin kind of give you a little bit more background if you want it. But I think tonight they're just trying to get a gauge of is the planning board open to hearing some suggestions of how we could get access up here, or you just, don't want to hear it?
Isn't it a private street with, if it's 4 to 10 residences, go to 12%?
Maybe, I thought it was 10, but maybe it is
Yeah,
12.
it's 10 on the chart, but down below there's a number 1.
Okay, yeah, okay, then it would be.
So
It's the same as the backlot, so it makes sense
Yeah.
it would be. But either way,
Still,
10 or
there's
12, when you go to
significantly
17,
beyond that, yeah.
it's a substantial visual difference. You can really know the difference when you're out there.
Did they consider paving it? Would that make it easier for the fire department to deal with if it was paved with those
A little
slopes?
bit, but it's still the slope.
Yeah.
I think one thing sorry.
Go ahead.
One thing we discussed up there was having an excavator look to see how much they could take off the top for soil, which will help bring down all the slope. So that's something that they're looking at. But I'll let Dustin and I'll let Inspector Jones kind of give their piece on concerns.
Give you a little bit of additional background. So the applicant has purchased the land. As Jim has indicated, the driveway exists today. We did survey the lot and we shot profile grades along the driveway coming in.
Hey, Dustin, just interrupt you a little slow here. On your diagram,
Yes.
this one that you have the
Yep.
6 lots, just trying to set the stage here, this lot 4 is what's going to be used as access to the back property?
Correct. So
Okay.
this area right here is lot 4 in that subdivision that we included in there just for some reference.
And the other lots are family members, is that what I'm?
Right, so what we've shown here is essentially 5 total lots that could potentially be created here. Now,
Potentially or created?
we're not proposing to create them at this time. What we're doing is some future planning. So we've included a copy of the deed in the packets there, which kind of outlines a very unique situation to this property where it's over 70 acres of land, but when it was conveyed, it's very specific in that deed that the owner is only allowed to gift 2 lots to his 2 existing children and 1 lot to, I believe, his sister. So those are the only 3 lots that can be created. His children are young, and so this will be 10, 12, 15 years from now that they could be gifted these lots. If they don't get gifted these lots, then they can't be sold. So
Okay.
this is what this is his intent is to pull a building permit now, if he may have already, he's talking about.
Yeah, I've been talking
Yeah,
about
been
it.
talking about pulling a building permit to construct this house, utilizing this existing road as a driveway, and to build an accessory garage structure on this portion of the property. So that is gonna move forward no matter what, just use it as a driveway. Existing, or this will be the new house with a garage down below. We'd like to do some planning while we're doing all of this to create a private road over this and provide improvements to the extent that it's necessary, so that 10, 15 years from now, whenever it needs to happen, or it could happen, there's the ability to create family gift lots in those, for those 3 proposed lots. But that would be something that would happen down the road.
And then just one before you, but this one shows a different name. Am I, as Burns, as the
Yeah, it's got nothing to do
as
with
the
it.
owners?
That's from an old survey, I think.
Is that just old?
Yeah, he's long
Yeah,
gone from
that's
owning
probably
that
the
way.
subdivision original.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's now formerly Robert F. Burns, so that was a previous owner.
Okay.
Yeah, this subdivision
Many years ago.
was
Got it.
from 1983.
Okay, no, I'm okay
Yeah.
now. I just,
Yeah.
thanks, Dustin.
So what we've discussed, and again, Jim and I visited the site, drove up to the top of the road. The intent is to take down some of the crown of the road at the top. Showing a little bit of it here. This is that existing profile as it kind of comes up. They've done some preliminary kind of digging at the top there, and we do think we can take that down several feet. I don't know if we can take it down 8 feet or if it's only going to be 3 feet, but to the extent that we can take the top off that hill, we will. We've got this, basically this transition area right when we're coming in off the road, and then it comes right up to 13%, and then we've got a stretch in through here, through the kind of S-curve at 17%, and then it gets closer to, or under 15% as it approaches that crest on the top. Total length of the kind of the steep 17% section of the road, you know, goes from about station 250 to maybe about 650, 700. So you get about 400 feet of road in there at that 17% slope. As Jim indicated, it's built with a very angular crushed gravel. The road's been in place for years and it really hasn't been used. But you know, with all these really big storms we've gotten in the last 2 years, there wasn't any evidence of erosion or anything, even with those really steep slopes. So that spoke volumes to us that this road seemed to have been built very well. There were some check dams constructed in the roadside ditches coming down. There was an area where they had started to kind of widen out right in this S-curve here. And again, I think it'd be very beneficial for the board to see this if you're going to be considering a waiver. But right in this area, it's nice and wide coming around that corner. And the thought was that we would widen that out, the gravel surface and everything, just to give us a nice flat area about halfway up the road, again, as kind of a staging spot if you're coming down and it's slippery, if you're going up and you just need a spot to be able to pull off, and also just extra space for vehicles to pass each other. So that's something that we can look at. There's drainage that basically crosses the road here, right at this S-curve, and kind of goes down and through this area. We did investigate alternative routes to see if maybe, because this existing driveway that comes in that'll serve this garage, that's in place now. If you drive by, you can see it. We looked at using that as the primary route and maybe trying to kind of do some switchbacks and make our way up through here. And there's just steep slopes wherever you go. So the place that they put the road in seems like it was logical, and they put it in the best spot that they could. Again, none of this land would be further access beyond. So some of the things we talked about today with the fire inspector is, so if we look to pursue a waiver of the standard here for steepness, and there's some concern about accessibility, Certainly, providing this area in through here for some extra width would be helpful. We're agreeable to providing sprinkler systems for all the buildings up there. Again, just as some added protection for fire protection. I think those things are important considerations when the board does discuss this waiver request. I think that's kind of where we're at for now. I know it's tough to see from just a picture. When you see it on site, you'll be able to make a better, more informed decision for sure.
Are we discussing this under a minor subdivision?
We're reviewing this under private road.
Under private road?
Right, because he wants to develop this for a private road, because even if it serves family lots, it's going to require a private road. So we don't see it under family lots, under family development. We won't see that as a subdivision, because that's exempt from subdivision.
Right.
But we see the private road, because we have a private road requirement. We capture it for that. Because the lots are served off, the lots need to be served off a road. So that's how we capture it.
Because it would seem to me it would be more of a subdivision.
Well, right now, it's really, like he said to his point, he's serving it as a driveway.
Right.
But he's trying to be preemptive and knowing that he has this right to carve it up for his family members. He's trying to be preemptive and figure out the best way to put that private road in for future design. Because he only wants to build that once.
But these are not the family members that we're talking about, the other lots. These are different.
Those are different.
Different, right,
Those are
okay.
completely different,
Yep.
right?
Does the widened area where you're midway up remain within the 50-foot right-of-way? You don't have to change property lines or anything from what's on it?
Yeah, I believe it would, and if it doesn't, I mean, we can certainly add an easement area or expand the right-of-way to come out and around that. That wouldn't be a problem.
And also the fire department, Inspector Jones is here if you have any questions.
Yeah,
in regards
that's my
to
next.
that.
What do you think there, Inspector Jones?
Like Dustin said, we talked about, the sprinkling of the residents is a
Yep.
huge help. This turnout, midway point is a huge help. From talking with the chief after I left our meeting, he's still very concerned about the 17% grade.
Right.
So anything we can do to at least modify that would be a huge help.
Okay.
And that's basically all emblematic on how much they can take the top of that ridge down.
No, it isn't, is it?
Well, for portions of it is. What we're
Right.
trying to do, right now, we've got 800 feet of roadway to get to the crest of the hill. And we've got areas at the bottom that are of suitable slope. We're trying to create areas at the top that are of suitable slope and not have such a long distance of this sustained
Right.
17% slope. So if we
Right.
can shorten that up, then I think that would be an improvement for sure.
So I know we'll be able to see this on sidewalk, but there's no opportunity after the S-curve. There's not much opportunity to do more back type. I mean, it would change the road configuration, but
Yeah, what it is this is the spot, so this is the steepest spot right in through here, and it's consistent across the entire property.
Gotcha.
So there's really no way, you have to get over it somehow, and then.
Over and through it.
Yeah. So what our thought, this is the top of the hill right here, and that's that steep section. So again, our thought was if we could push that down, that this part right here, as you come around the corner, is not quite so bad, and then it gets steep right here. So the thought is if we can, again, push that down, then we'd have a quicker transition to get up into the fire.
so in terms of pushing it down, if you hit ledge, that would be sort of prohibitive, or what would be prohibitive of going down 8 feet?
Yeah, it'd be ledge.
You'd have to blast.
Yeah. Gotcha. Thanks.
Any other comments?
Wait, what's the primary concern of it? Is it the big vehicles not having enough power to get up that hill, or is it just in bad conditions?
Oh,
Yeah, it's not so much the power issue, it's just, with that kind of a slope, for an example, on a different road this past winter, we actually got stuck at the top of the hill because we physically couldn't go down the steep grade. So it's those types of conditions that this type of a grade presents issues for us, especially when you're carrying the amount of water that we do in the fire apparatus.
But if it was paved and clear, that would be less of an issue, or?
It'd be less, yes. It would be less of an issue if it was paved, but that's not being proposed.
Is there anything else that could mitigate the 15-degree slope, 17, that would make it easier for you?
Well, we talked about switchbacks doesn't seem possible.
Right.
We're trying to mitigate that steepness of slope
But
as
some
best that we can.
some steepness in there, you guys could probably live with. Some amount of steepness, just not that much.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that sustained steep, and you get the
Right.
speed, you get all that
Yeah.
pressure on your brakes, and if you
Yep.
get any kind of
Ice.
ice or slippery conditions,
Yeah.
you'd be driving that down. I think in Utah, they have these things where they have,
Yeah, they do, right? You shoot right up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Truck
just,
ramp.
I just plotted a 10% grade, from .00 all the way out to 10. And you're talking a massive amount of earth,
Fill,
and
yeah.
you're creating a big bathtub where the road is
Right.
with, the slope going up the side of the top of the hill. I don't know.
yeah, it's
I
one,
hope this
I
guy
think
has
it's,
deep pockets, because that's a lot of dirt.
I think it's one you have to see, because when I went out there and I saw the same thing, the first section at 13, it does not look that bad, but when you see the next section at 17, you realize that is a little bit more formidable to make it up over that. So I think it's worth a site walk for you folks to take a look at it, and then from there, we can, have more discussion about what can be done.
There's a tow line to get us up there, is that?
I'll put a chairlift in.
That's perfect.
Dustin and I walked up that hill, and we're kind of like, we'll drive up, we'll meet you up there.
Okay, so, I think we should do sidewalk one way or the other. But I guess we should give Dustin at least some kind of a guidance as far as the waiver goes. So, I don't think we need to have a vote, but I would think,
You mean a
But-
waiver on the grade?
yeah, from listening to Inspector Jones, I think that we probably could go out of here thinking that you were not going to get a waiver for the whole 17.
It's got to be better than it is.
Right, it has to be
right
better
now.
than this.
Yep.
Is that a fair statement?
That's fair.
Fair statement from the board? You, okay.
Well, I'm wondering if instead of insisting on 10% for the whole thing, could we be okay with, 12, 13% for a stretch, and then flattening it out to 9 or 10, and kind of, modify it going up
Yes,
and down?
that's what we're
each-
talking about.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
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 okay.
definitely, I think that's doable. I mean,
That
if
may
it
be-
is
Because,
doable,
the standard is actually, to the point, is actually 12
Right.
for this number of units served on this private road. So they're close with 13 in the front section.
Yeah.
It's just that back section that's just too much,
Yeah.
too long.
Yeah.
So we need to, and I think they're very well aware that they're gonna have to do something, and they're already trying to figure out if they can take the top of the hill off to help mitigate some of that as well.
so I guess next question is, do you want to schedule a site walk now, or do you want to wait until we get more information? If the top of the hill can't come off, and nothing is going to change that 17 grade, a site walk's not going to make it better.
Well, the top can come down, we'll dig if you hit ledge, if you got to blast a section of it, it can happen. So
Right.
it's a matter of, we're talking about quite a few lots up there, so if we had to blast, we're not blasting for utilities and all that stuff, it's just for subgrade, so it's not out of the question. We certainly would like to do that, but if that gets to a comfort level, I wouldn't say that we're not willing to do any of that,
Okay,
so.
I think it's, while the weather's,
sure, no, that's fine with me.
yeah,
I just,
it's easy to see right now, and, if this thing gets delayed or whatever, we get into the winter, we're not gonna wanna do it at that point, because it is fairly not difficult to get in there, but right now it's a prime time to see it.
Sure, I have no problem, but I mean, if there was no option of lowering, then it'd be silly for us to go.
Yeah, because at this point, we'd like to, we can talk about, I mean, there's certain sections that it is what it is, but there's other sections that we can potentially make some alterations, and so, like Jim said, I think it'll help you to see it, and then you'll be able to tell us definitively if there's a comfort level or if there's not.
Is the lot configurations locked in by the deed or anything, so you can modify those? Because it looks like you can make a switchback onto lot 4, right past the first curve, kind of come.
Yeah, yeah. It really. This is that section, and again, that I think this is the top of the hill right here.
Okay.
So this is actually flattened through here. So this is the section right here where I think if we can push it down, because this is actually all coming down the hill on the other side.
Yeah, it goes way
So
down.
and you'll notice it when you come up. This is the absolute high spot right here, and we're kind of right next to it. So, and it starts actually. That's where it starts to come down the hill. So if this high spot here, that's that stretch of new road that we're talking about. So this is right, pretty much where lot 4 starts. This is where the lot widens out, is right here.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is potentially, dropping that down.
To your point, I thought the same thing, so I just took a little gander over there, and again, when you see it in person, it's actually steeper over there.
Okay, sidewalk schedule. When you guys want to go?
I mean, you have adequate daylight, you can do it before the next planning board meeting if you so choose, if that works for everybody. In August,
We could do that, with that.
or if you
Yeah,
wanna go
that
on some
works,
other
yeah.
time, that's open too, but I mean, right now, we got daylight before these meetings, so
So you
it's
think?
close by, so.
Yeah, it's really close by. How long, are we driving up, walking up?
I think what we do is,
We'll open the gate, and I think we should probably, we can park at the bottom and then
Right.
maybe take 3 cars up or something if we
Yeah.
want to. Just carpool to the top, or
yeah.
Okay.
I'll
so-
jump in the back of my pickup.
Yeah, I think it's a very nice, where that first lot is a very nice area to pull off, so we just go through the gate and just take a left and just pull off. Oops, sorry, there's a nice area there, everybody can park, and then we can just decide if we want to walk up or if we want to,
Oh, okay. No, I'm just thinking about time-wise.
Probably-
If we're walking to the top
yeah,
of the
probably
hill.
6 is fine.
6?
I don't think it'd be more than a half hour.
No, I mean, it's 800 feet of road, and I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that
It's easy.
far. It's just up.
So we're gonna meet right off of Egypt Road.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
through the gate, you go right through the gate, and there's an area.
Yeah, there's ample parking on the left as you drive in where the barn is proposed. So right when you come in the gate on the left-hand side, there's plenty of parking right here.
It's a wide, flat area there, all gravelled.
How far off 302 in Egypt, 85 in Egypt is that?
Probably
You're close
3
to the
miles.
gray line.
Yeah, you're right on the
It's
gray
right
line
there.
almost.
You're right at the gray line of
The
this
second to
property.
last lot.
Right before you
Oh,
get to,
it's on the far end down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
before you get to Westwood, and
Yeah.
right before that.
It actually has a street address on the gate, 25.
Okay.
So we say
Okay.
6 o'clock before the next meeting?
6 o'clock for the next meeting,
Okay.
225 Egypt Road.
That's 6 o'clock the night of the next meeting, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then will this project be on that agenda to discuss the site walk afterwards, or how would you like to do that?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
That's typically what we do. I mean, that's why we kind of choose those nights, so we can have a discussion.
sure, I don't see any reason,
We'll be here for the other project anyway, so we can discuss what we saw, or,
Do you think you'll have more information about the potential of lowering the?
we can, if it'll help, we can go up there and do some test pits, and, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I
they're,
think that'd be a big help.
that would
yeah,
help.
yeah, they're ready to go, so.
So I would say I'll put it on the agenda for a sidewalk discussion, as long as there's something that
To talk
is-
about.
To talk about, right. If
Yeah.
there's nothing to talk
Yeah,
about,
it kind of goes on as other business. so-
yeah, it'll just go.
Okay,
Okay,
fair enough, thank you.
you're welcome. Did you have nothing else tonight, Doug?
Roma show.
All right.
All right, so we have 2 decisions for approval that require signatures.
Correct. You've got Sideshow Disc Golf and Highwire. both in the same proximity. High Wire was an extension of the previous approval. Sideshow was the one you approved last month. I think I've captured everything in there. And if you, we just need those signed.
Why don't you send those along with a black pen, and we'll sign them as we go along. And the last item is did go to the selectmen to talk about the loop road, private road, work with the subdivision that would require the paving of the road into the subdivision. And basically, there was very positive. They were very supportive of work towards an ordinance that in fact would require that for a subdivision when it made sense, obviously, when connected. We talked about the increased cost, like Kyle mentioned, and the feeling of the board, of the selectmen kind of was that, yeah, but on the flip side to that is it reduces greatly the amount of yearly contributions to any road association to maintain the road. Yes, the town would be responsible for maintaining the road.
And I think from your standpoint, just better long-term planning and connectivity of the lots.
Right.
If we leave it to public developers to work together, the likelihood of that is very limited. Because when one section goes in, they don't want anybody else impeding their privacy. Where if it's a public road, they have no say.
So I asked Jim to put together he put together a nice short package. I don't know if he gave it to everybody, but to me that I used for the selectmen. I asked him to put together a package for all of us
Everybody should have one.
to look at.
Yep.
And you should have one.
Yeah, it was just a discussion we had back earlier this year, and I just forwarded to everybody. And in that, I gave you examples from other nearby towns of what they do for street connectivity and connect, with right-of-ways to back properties and things like that. So in that, you've got Wyndham, Gray, Gorham, Standish, and Westbrook. Just as some local examples of how they address the issue of connectivity in subdivisions. And I think what we were discussing would most likely happen in cluster developments, correct?
Right.
Yep. So again, we're promoting no increase in no increase in the number of lots per development. The density would be smaller.
yes.
And the infrastructure hopefully would be less as well, but we'd be looking for loop roads and connectivity for future access points. Right.
So I don't think, if anyone has any questions, we certainly could talk about it, but I think it might be better if we had an opportunity to read the stuff that Jim gave us, take some notes, think about the pros and the cons, and then we could start working in the ordinance. And there's probably nothing, Jim, that we could ask you to do yet until we have a chance.
No, and I think, typically we wait till after summer, and everybody's kind of got the summer vacations out of our head. We usually start in the mid-fall before we start thinking about next year's.
Yeah, I think I might want to start on this one a little bit
This one is a
earlier.
little bit more of a policy more than it is a quick technical change to an ordinance, so it may be something we want to start digging into September.
Right, yeah, and maybe even get some comments from Dustin.
Right.
On how we're proceeding and what he would see as the impact.
Yep.
of planning.
I think to your point, we probably want to have a few workshops, maybe public workshops,
Right.
where, maybe we could even reach out to a few of the developers just to get some input as to their take, as to what they could live with or not.
Right. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah.
So we'll have it on the agenda for just topic discussion.
Yeah, I think it'll just be an ongoing, we'll keep it on all the agendas, and if we have time, we can open up and have, but again, I think it'd also be valuable if you have any comments, questions, concerns, write them down, send them to Scott or myself or through Bob, whatever, but I think it should be a cumulative, input of everybody's opinions here. And,
Right.
and if you know something that you think could be beneficial, send it along to us and we can kind of congregate all these ideas and at least get them in some kind of written form so it would be something we can follow.
Yeah, and I think that would be beneficial if we could do that next meeting.
Okay.
I think if we only have, one or two on the agenda.
Yeah.
Not that we need to start doing
No.
anything with it, but at least to get a roadmap, a list of bullet points that we can start investigating to figure out, the pros and cons, what we should look at to move ahead with it.
Yeah, and I think we can start even just getting some tables or something, set up pros and cons and just see, how that works out and what are the technical aspects and just kind of, like you said, formulate some kind of roadmap.
Right. And
No
then
pun intended.
The sooner we can get developers in a workshop,
Right,
you know,
yeah,
it'd be nice to have all that well in advance and not kind of down to the last minute.
right. Yeah, I know, because once we get into winter, we might lose a meeting because
Right.
of weather, and then
Yep.
we get pinched.
All right. Move to adjourn. Nice going.
Second.
All in favor? Done. Thank you.